folks, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to what is most definitely going to be a new series here on the channel because it is very on brand. And today we're going to be talking about Jeweler Richard episode 1. But before we get into things, I do want to remind you all that if you would like to have your name shouted out in next week's Jeweler Richard video, then be sure to share this video around on the internet and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much over on Twitter, and I will be sure to shout your name out in next week's video. Also, just as a side note, comments and shares do tell me that you guys want me to continue the show. When something gets a bunch of shares on Twitter or a bunch of comments on the specific video, it kind of tells me that there's some level of engagement there. So if you want to see a specific series continue, you gotta share it, you gotta comment. And please let this be one of the shows that people want me to talk about because, oh my goodness, I really liked this. What do you say we go ahead and talk about it, huh? Because I have so many thoughts about Jeweler Richard. I gotta say, the whole series is, it's so special, and I can already tell how much I'm gonna grow attached to it. The OP, for example, right? The OP is the moment I knew that I was probably gonna love this, and I was right because the OP and everything that leads up to it, right? Seiji meeting Richard for the first time and everything that led up to it, the narration, everything about it, it just struck me as a show that I knew I was going to really fall for. The art is that special Bishonen style where everybody looks super pretty and the backgrounds are all painted with these really light colors and everything's just super pleasant to look at, and I love that. It's one of my favorite styles of both character design and background art is the stuff shown here, and even the music by Nobuko Toda, who worked on Sweetness and Lightning, as well as apparently the Ultraman series, which I find interesting, and also Metal Gear Solid. Okay. Regardless, the music for Jeweler Richard is very calm and peaceful with lots of piano, which I love, and the narration as well. Normally, I'm not a big fan of narration in anime, unless it's something like last time on Dragon Ball Z. Like if it's something like that, then it's kind of fun. But sometimes narration in anime can feel a little on the nose. I think in shonen it tends to work well, like stuff like My Hero, where we have Deku narrating, since the whole story is being told to you by Deku, since we know that from episode 1, that's what's going on. And with Jeweler Richard, you get, it's unlike, even though it's not a shonen, you still get that sense that this is Seiji telling you the story of his relationship through the years with Richard back to you. It actually kind of felt like this was Seiji's journal, and that's going to become a running thread because Seiji very much reminds me of John Watson. He is, if he's Watson, Richard is most certainly Holmes. And he even meets his Mary at one point, which I think is kind of interesting. They're just missing a Lestrade, and they're all good. But it's interesting to me how he reflects Watson a lot, and that's specifically in the narration because it's this beautiful Sherlock Holmes, but almost like Gatsby-esque narration where it's this very flowery language, and it really paints each scene in even more beautiful light, I guess is the only way I can describe it. It feels like listening to an older person tell you some of their favorite memories of being a younger person. That type of narration where you're painting the past with this beautiful brush of nostalgia, you know, it really just feels so, it just feels so beautifully written, so fantastic. And it's from a creator whose work I'm just not familiar with, Nanako Sujimura, and if they have ever written anything else that's also been animated, please do let your boy know because this is fantastic. And if they're on Twitter, let me know so I can follow them. And also, since I may as well just mention it now since I talked about the OP a little bit, Jeweler Richard has, without a doubt, the best ED of the entire season, and I don't think it's gonna be beat. It's this really nice song. It actually kind of reminds me of some of Fruits Basket's OPs and EDs. Like it's that sort of feel to it, where it almost feels like a little old school in a weird way. And the visuals are like these beautiful, sparkling diamonds fluttering around our already pretty character designs. and it's just so good. It just sparkles with such passion, and I love it to pieces. I love the ED, easily my favorite ED of the season. And the OP is a contender for OP of the season. And if you couldn't tell, I just adored this premiere. But let's go ahead and try to tackle the rest of the episode scene by scene, shall we? So let's go ahead with Seiji and Richard's first meeting, since that's where the episode picks up. And when we start, we actually have Seiji sort of reflecting on this train ride. I also just want to point out that I love how the episode begins with these two separated, and then by the end they're so close that they're riding the train side by side, looking at the window. Oh, you could tell I already ship it. But it's interesting how Seiji opens this episode with a reflection on his grandmother just before he meets Richard, who is ultimately going to bring that conflict to an end, or at least help him bring that conflict to an end. And he's sort of reflecting on this time where he noticed that his grandmother had gotten a little annoyed with him for finding this ring, this beautiful, I believe they call it a pink sapphire. And it's she tells him, like, be good to people, Seiji. Like, you have to do good by people. Don't be bad, and try to help people where you can. And it's this very, like, okay, like, I wonder what's up with that ring. That's interesting. And so it properly sets up that, like, I wonder what was up with that ring. So you're already sort of like, okay, what was that about? So you already want to see how that's going to unravel before you even know Seiji as a character yet. And I thought that was really clever. And then the cleverness continues. And this time it's not so much from the writer as much as it's from Seiji himself, since he sees Richard being accosted by a group of drunks. And I don't know if you guys have played the Yakuza series, but my God, Japan has a problem with just drunk dudes starting fights for no goddamn reason. And it's three dudes who are drunk, and the only thing missing from this scene is Kiryu kicking ass. But alas, Kiryu is not there to defend our boy Richard, so it's gonna have to come down to Seiji. And Seiji, this shows his initiative and his cleverness, because he sees this person being attacked. He's not sure who Richard is yet. He has no clue. And he just immediately feels the need to jump into action. But he's not dumb. He doesn't just run in and, like, he doesn't Jonathan Joestar it. Like, he doesn't just run in and start a fight even though he knows he's gonna lose. He's smart. He just shouts, "Officer, this way, over here," making it seem as though he brought the police with him. And then he runs after them, and the drunks scatter because they don't want to get arrested. So there was no, like, to be clear, there was no officer. Seiji just was smart and pretended like there was one to scare them. I genuinely appreciate seeing characters who still want to help save the day and be a hero for justice, but actually use their head to do so instead of just running in guns a-blazing. Don't get me wrong, I also love my guns a-blazing stupid characters as well. I clearly have a soft spot for them if you watch my My Hero videos. But Seiji, him using his head kind of told me, like, oh, okay, so we're in for something a little bit different here. I appreciate that. And him meeting Richard for the first time was really funny because Richard catches him off guard. This happens twice in the episode where Seiji is caught off guard. It happens with Richard, and then it happens later with the woman who's trying to cross the street, but we'll get there. Essentially his Mary. And I just find it ironic that both his Sherlock and his Mary catch him off guard and get him flustered, because I'm like, yep, I'm gonna go ahead and just point out that Seiji's probably bi. And Richard is not, like, immediately interested in Seiji or anything. He's just sort of like, oh, thanks, that's really cool of you. And I love that Richard says, like, "Are you okay?" Like, cause he sees Richard's this, like, blonde dude who's clearly not from here. And so he speaks really fluent English, by the way. Just like, "Are you okay?" Like, and he's like, and Richard just responds in Japanese, like, "No, dude, I'm fine. You don't have to speak in English. I got you, fam." And I was like, oh, that's really sweet. I like that. And shoutouts to my boy Yuma Uchida, who voices Seiji, for that flawless English. But then again, if you know Uchida's work, then you already knew that his English was pretty great, because he also voices Ash from Banana Fish. It's never gonna be okay. Oh, Banana Fish still gives me so much emotions. Anyway, he also voices Kyo, but again, you probably knew that from Fruba. And Ueno Yama from Given. I swear this dude is just the voice of every show that I really like. Richard Seiyu is no slouch either, by the way. He's voiced by Takahiro Sakurai. who you may know as Reagan from Mob, Rohan from JoJo, Fitzgerald from Bungo Stray Dogs, and Ayame from Fruba. More Fruba people. But yeah, you have two stellar seiyus at the helm, and they really do they're just another part of this episode that really elevates this premiere into being something really special for me. I think their performances are just so solid across the board. But to tie this discussion of the seiyus back into the episode itself, after Seiji rescues Richard and the two of them part ways, the next scene is Seiji actually calling Richard to have lunch with him. And this is where Seiji asks Richard to appraise the ring that his grandmother wore, and we also find out that his grandmother had passed away a short time ago while he was in the middle of studying for exams. So it's obviously been a really trying time for Seiji. He's probably emotionally kind of unstable right now. And in that sort of lunch date that they have, because you can't tell me that wasn't a date. I know he was trying to just get his ring appraised, but they hang out a little too much for me to not ship it. And the way that they hang, I'm just saying, like, they go on a little too many lunch dates for me to not ship it. And the scene of them together, like, appraising the ring, you can already get a sense of how their dynamic is going to play out, with Seiji sort of being the more pluckier one, the lighthearted one, and Richard being the sort of soft-spoken one. And he has a little bit more, like, he's thinking a lot more than he's saying. I really only compare it to Sherlock and Watson in the sense that Sherlock is the one who knows everything that's going on. He's usually 10 steps ahead, and his mind's a little bit sharper than Watson's is, but Watson has the heart that Sherlock needs to sort of ground him. And that's the relationship dynamic that I'm sensing between Seiji and Richard. And that dynamic is already evident in that lunch scene, and it's kind of where I'm like, oh, great. And not only do I love this show, I'm already going to ship these two. Fantastic! I can't even hold myself back for like an episode. Jeez. But anyway, we move on from that scene. We see Seiji at the crosswalk where he meets his Mary. And essentially they're crossing the street, and Seiji immediately notes this old man across the street, and I'm thinking he's gonna help him cross or something like that. And then this lady comes up and she asks if the old man needs a hand across the street, and then it turns out the old man is faking his like back pain just so he can hold hands with pretty women like a creep. And Seiji immediately is just like, "Hey, sir, don't worry. I'll help you cross the street. Hold on to my hand strong now, okay?" And the old man gets annoyed because he knows he's been caught. He stands upright and then saunters away and then bolts once he crosses the street. And the girl's like, "Are you kidding me?" And the dude even says, like, "You need to be more careful." And that's when he looks at her and he kind of gets flustered a little bit. And I'm like, oh, this is his Mary. I don't ship it nearly as much, but that's cool. And it's here that I really started to notice the Watson vibes, because people kept calling him this hero of justice. And I was like, man, he's a justice-seeking dude. He has this interesting relationship with a soft-spoken but incredibly sharp-minded person. He has the crush on this girl on the side. Is he Watson? And that's when it all started to kind of spin, and I was like, oh, okay, so it's like Jeweler Richard is sort of a Sherlock Holmes tale, but focused more around jewelry. Kind of dope, actually. And then the rest of the episode is basically just finding out the origins about the ring, and this is where the episode really starts to kind of break my heart a little bit, because Seiji's grandmother, as it turns out, stole the ring, which was a surprise for me. I was like, what? We're going somewhere really interesting with this. And as it turns out, in the time period that his grandmother had grown in, she was trying to raise her daughter on her own, and that was obviously very difficult. So she resorted to becoming a pickpocket to help support her and her daughter. And that led her to stealing a ring off this woman, and the woman later jumped in front of a train the next day. And obviously, Seiji's grandmother felt horrible, so she went to go retrieve the ring, and then was arrested once the police figured out what was going on. And she could never find the family after that, so she just held on to the ring and never really explained why she kept the ring if it made her feel so bad. But Seiji reasons that she must have kept it as a way to remember this horrible mistake she made. The woman didn't die, by the way, but she was badly injured, and she couldn't figure out, like, whatever happened to that person. So now, after his grandmother passed, he wants to really help her spirit kind of be at peace So he feels the need to finish this now decades-old mystery of finding the original owner of this ring. And I thought that this would be like the overarching plot of the show or something. But no, the premiere actually continues this story right through to the conclusion. And I was taken aback by how much it kind of got me feeling emotional. And the person who they go to see is Miss Miyashita Tai. And it's exactly who you think it is. Richard's friend turns out to be the woman whose ring was stolen that day. And what ends up happening is Miyashita's story is genuinely, it's that her life actually improved after that ring was stolen from her, because that ring was from a arranged marriage that she was forced into during a time of financial crisis for her family. And she never wanted to be married. So when the ring was stolen, she almost felt a sense of relief, because she didn't have to, like, she viewed that ring as a shackle. And so once it was removed, there was this sort of weight lifted off of her. But when she went home, her parents straight up hit her because they were furious with her for trying to ruin the marriage as they saw it. And so she felt this conflict where she was incredibly unhappy, and yet she couldn't follow through to make her parents happy, so she didn't know what to do, so she just leapt in front of the train and ended up in a hospital room because of it. And the doctor who was there claimed that it was essentially a miracle that she survived at all, let alone the condition that she was in. She was able to kind of continue to live well into her old age by the time that we meet her. And as it turns out, the handsome doctor who was treating her ended up taking quite a liking to her. And then they would get married. And it was basically Miyashita saying, you don't know where life's going to take you. You just kind of have to go with things. Life is, to quote Ferris Bueller, life moves pretty fast. And basically just saying that life works in very mysterious ways. Fate can pull you into many different directions, and sometimes they're bad, and sometimes you think they're going to be bad, but really they end up turning out okay. In Miyashita's case, it turned out pretty okay after her ring was stolen. And so she tells Seiji to carry a message to his grandmother for her, just saying to let this pain go, that she was never mad at her. She never resented her. If anything, she just wanted to thank her. And I was, in that moment, I was like, oh my heart, I can't take it. And I thought that was where I was getting all kinds of emotional. And then the train ride home happened, and you get this beautifully peaceful piano track. As I said, the music in the show is fantastic. And you get this beautiful little piano piece and this really informative chat from Richard, where Richard's explaining like what the jewel meant and how the jewel is also, it represents a sense of justice, and that's likely where Seiji's name comes from, that he was named after the ring and after his grandmother's sense of wanting to atone to raise this grandchild who would be a beacon for people who needed help, like essentially making her grandson a pillar of justice as a way to atone. And I was just like, oh my god. And then Seiji gets really emotional thinking about his grandmother and starts to cry on the train, and Richard's there to sort of give him words of comfort, and it's just, oh my god, I came this close to crying. I was like, whoa, this is like the first show of the season to get me to that breaking point. And I was like, what the hell? I was not expecting this at all. And that's basically where we end the episode. Seiji and Richard end up hitting it off to the point where Richard asks Seiji to be a part-timer at his jewelry shop, basically working weekends, doing some odd jobs and cleaning up around the shop. And that's where the two lives intersect. And Richard even points out that his grandmother was from Sri Lanka, where the jewel that is on the ring was made from, the pink sapphire. So it's almost as though fate had tied these two together, and fate being sort of a running trend throughout the episode of tying these individual people to each other, being tied together through these gemstones and these diamonds. And I just think it's so good. It's such a good premiere. The only thing, and I do mean the only thing, that holds this episode back is unfortunately the animation is relatively standard. It's not bad animation, it's competent animation. It does the job that it has to do, but there's no movement here that really catches your eye. There's no sense of really beautiful movement in the episode. It's really pretty art, but that's kind of all it is. It's very, very pretty, and the animation, when the characters do move, it's not like it's janky. It's perfectly fine, but it's nothing truly standout. However, the rest of the episode is truly standout as far as I'm concerned. This, I have a feeling, is gonna be the show that gets slept on, and that sucks because Drooler Richard, it's just so good. Please watch this show. Please watch this show. On that note, everybody, I'm gonna wrap up my thoughts here. Sorry if I went too long in this video. I have to give this an A tier, but know that it is not only my favorite premiere of the season, and I really do mean that. It is truly my favorite premiere of the season, but it's also just shy of an S tier, like just shy. If the animation was a little bit more vibrant, I would have happily given this an S. But yeah, this is easily my favorite premiere of the season, which is a total surprise. And that's going to do it for today's video, everybody, so I hope you guys enjoyed, and before we go, as always, I have to give a big thank you to the good folks over on Patreon, especially those in the Earl Grey tier: Andrew W., Calvin A., Crowbar of Irony, Daniel G., Digger the Fox, Dominic G., Ionos, Urza, Ginkutaku, Godzilla Fan, No For Nothing, Maria Teresa, Marshall B., Mirth Mouser, Cell, Shadow Creative, Sipco Games, Somastan, Stephen G., Sakochi, Tristan G., and Verdon. A huge thank you to all of you in the T Squadron for your continued support, and if you too would like to join the T Squadron, then be sure to check out the first link in the description to check out our Patreon page, see all the cool rewards you can get over there, as well as access to our Patreon exclusive Discord for as little as $1 a month. And with that said, we're going to wrap up today's video, everybody, so thank you all once again for watching, and if you are feeling stressed out today, then you go have yourself a warm cup of tea, and I will talk to you all again real soon.